You may not know this, but in 2020, I had planned to travel solo from the UK to Singapore overland. That meant no planes. I could only travel by train, bus, car, ferry, donkey if needed. Of course, Corona came and everything closed and stopped me 2 months in. I wasn't happy. In those 2 months though, I'd seen some amazing things. The Eiffel Tower, Neuschwanstein Castle, the gnomes of Wrocław, Chernobyl, the Pistochna Salt Caves, whatever this is. But by far, there was one place that was my favourite. Stari Most, in Mostar, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's a bridge, obviously, previously destroyed in the Bosnian War in 1993. People like jumping off it for some reason, but for me, I liked it because it felt like someone had dropped me into a painting. And I remember sitting for hours and admiring the beauty of it all. In a world of chaos, I felt calm. But then I came back to the UK, where I swapped exploring the world for exploring computer graphics and virtual reality. It's just recently my Blender projects have been a bit mundane. I mean, I've made tutorials for a door and a chair, but they've hardly taken the world by storm, I can tell you. But I've realised that to really progress with a skill, you do have to stretch yourself to face problems that are beyond your capability. Because you'll never know how much you'll learn. And so my challenge is to recreate this scene in Blender. No idea how yet. Hang on, I'll need a photo. Let's get started. The first thing I'll do is delete everything in the scene and bring in that reference image. Now I'm going to split the modelling into parts, starting with the bridge, the buildings, the rocks and the river, the trees, the background, the hills and the sky. And it's at this point I've realised this is going to take me a while. Well, in for a penny. I built out the shape of a quarter of the bridge, putting in some of the detail, and then deleted all but one side. Then I used a modifier to mirror the quarter in the X and Y axes, making adjustments until the bridge was complete. And that's the first thing off the list. Next, I needed to do the buildings, and oh my, were there many. I made a base house as a template from which to create the rest of the houses, and despite a few differently shaped buildings and towers here and there, this worked quite well, and in only a few short hours, I was able to create most of the buildings in the image. But before I could begin to banish the barrage of bewildering and beguiling buttresses and buildings from my brain, it was right onto the rather rousing realisation of rough and ragged rocks. By subdividing a simple icosphere, I used Blender's sculpting tools to work it like bread dough into the correct shape. The rock was a little smooth, so I tried applying a displacement modifier with a noise texture to make it rougher, but it caused my graphics card to start grumbling like Victor Meldrew. I repeated these steps until I had added a large number of rocks, and then added some of the stone slabs and footbridge for good measure. I was petrified these rocks wouldn't look nice, but if I may be so bolder, I didn't need to quarry. I think I did a pretty solid job. Anyway, shall we move on to trees? To create the trees, I found a picture online and started extruding a cube up manually. The branches looked quite good, but it was taking so long. I was beginning to question my life choices. There must be a better way, I thought. It turns out there was. Blender has something called the Sapling Tree Generator, an add-on which comes with preset trees and the ability to create your own trees from scratch if you want. Once I'd chosen a few, I simply added lots and lots of them into the scene. Oh, he didn't realise there's a much better way to make lots and lots of objects in Blender. Oh, let's just leave him to it for now. Next, I sculpted out some hills, one for the foreground and one that would be hidden in mist far away. I then decided it was time to add some colour to the myriad of grey objects on the screen and used an image texture to make the hill look like it was out of a PlayStation 2 game. I liked that effect and used image textures for every other object. While it didn't look particularly real, it was motivating to see things start to take shape, and even more so when I opened the floodgates and brought in the river, adding a bump map to produce some turbulence. The river needed to reflect the sky, which I cheated a bit on, because I just put a simple image on a plane. Don't tell anyone. I was getting bored of modelling objects, so I started to add the foliage to the side of one of the houses using a hair particle system and a leaf object. And that's when I realised I can do the same for the background buildings. And that is what I did. I made a few low poly buildings, put materials on them and assigned them to a single collection. I added a particle system to the hill and set it to emit objects from that collection. Using weight painting, the blue, greeny, red thing, I increased the density of buildings in some areas, and after playing about with the settings for a bit, I did the same for some trees, mixing urbanity and nature together in a soup of polygons. But I thought my graphics card wasn't sweating enough, so to all of the hills I added grass, in some cases 3 types of grass, dark green, yellow and brown. I thought it added a touch of realism. And talking of realism, I discovered texture painting, which I found to be very useful. It allows you to apply textures directly onto object meshes, so I use this to add grunge, imperfections and shading to the scene. The beach came out really well, with the algae and grass mixing with sand and rock. This process of painting took a really long time, as I had over 100 objects to individually paint, but eventually the scene was coming together. All that was left was to adjust the sunlight, create some mist to hide the hill in the background, do some last-minute adjustments, and then... it was finished. The picture I had spent weeks on. It was done. The Stari Most in Blender. Sure, it didn't look real, but that doesn't matter. People always think that everything you do has to be perfect, myself included in the past. But they're missing the point. Sometimes the point is just to try it, because you never know how much you'll learn.